I want to mention this because my mom used to say, "You're just so Americanized," and I always explain to her, you know what? At the beginning, I did it because I needed to survive, and that was the only way to do it. You had to become part of it, part of the traditions, part of the life of your new life. And years later, I told mom, I said, I did it because that's the only way that I could reach my goals.
Hey guys, this is Coach K, and you're listening to the Making Changes, Breaking Barriers podcast, where we talk about you. This is about you, your mind, and your path. So welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Thank you for being here. Like always, I'm very appreciative for you taking time out of your day to listen to me speak. And luckily today, and luckily for all of you, we have another person on the podcast today. If you're watching the video, you can see. If you're not, I'm going to leave it as a surprise here for another minute, but you get to hear from someone else today and hear about their incredible journey to where they are now and how they built that life. But real quick, before we get into that, I just want to say, and I've been saying this on some of my podcasts previously as well, but if you have been listening to this podcast consistently and you are really enjoying it, I would really appreciate if you take the time to go onto whatever platform you're listening on, whether that's Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and leave a rating and review. Doing that not only, gives me a good smile to see new reviews in there, but it also then kind of pushes those platforms to push the podcast out to new listeners so we can just spread this message to more and more people. So I'd really appreciate that if you could take the time to do that. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and give the bio for our guest today. And very quickly, you will know who I'm talking about. Again, if you're listening to this and not watching. But instead of just doing a normal bio like I normally do for my podcast guests, I am actually going to read something I wrote for this person at one point. And I actually wrote this letter to this person on my wedding day. So I'm not going to read the entire letter. It actually was very long. I went back and read it a few days ago and I was like, wow, I had a lot to say, but I'm going to read just a few parts of it. Hopefully neither of us get too emotional or tears before we even start getting to the good stuff. So here we go. Mom, your one and only daughter, your baby girl, is getting married today. Can you even believe it? I don't know what it feels like to be a parent, but I can only imagine the emotions rushing through you today. You brought me into this world, helped me grow, and now watch as I marry the love of my life. Mom, I'm so happy, happier than I've ever been, and I predict my sense of happiness will only continue to grow as I grow through life with Cora. She is the perfect person for me. And then I go on in the letter just about a bunch of nice things about Cora, but I'm going to skip that part for this episode. So then I say, I'm so proud to call you my mom. I know everyone says that they have the best mom in the world, but when I say it, it's the truth. I can't imagine a person who is a better mother than you've been to Alex, Brandon, and I. We have grown up so privileged to live in a household that you managed. You made us feel so loved. You made us feel so safe. And you always made us feel like our possibilities in the world were endless. I don't think I could ever fully wrap my head around this when I was a kid, but I want you to know that now I am so in awe of the life you've created for yourself and your family. Sometimes I think I'm brave, and then I think about you getting on a plane, which we're going to talk about today. This is going to be the good stuff today. But getting on a plane at 18 years of age to go to a new country where you barely spoke the language to create a better life for yourself. Or a different life. We'll maybe ask that question. I mean, talk about courage. I get my courage from you, Mom. You created a life for yourself that not only provides for your kids, but also provides for a lot of your other family members as well. How selfless is that? Even though it look a lot different, I only can hope that I can support and be there for my family like you have always been for yours. Mom, thank you for being my rock. You are always there for me. It's an amazing feeling to know that I have someone I can call anytime and say I need you, and you will be there. How many people can say that? That is love. That is unconditional love. Whether I was having a nightmare as a kid, or I needed help with a project late at night in high school, or countless rides to basketball tournaments and games, or going through my first breakup, or helping me move into college, or helping me run my first auction and on and on and on. You're always there. I can count on you, and I want you to know you can count on me too. I'll be there for you through anything, just so you know. I'm your daughter and can be that person for you too. So with that being said, you obviously know who's here with us today. I want to welcome my mom, Beatriz Williams, onto the Making Changes, Breaking Barriers podcast for the first time. So welcome, and thank you for doing this with me today.
Thank you.
Yeah. So like I already mentioned, one of the big reasons that I wanted to have my mom on the podcast today, and not just because I love her and she's an awesome person, but she really does have an amazing story. So I'll let you kind of tell that story a little bit, where you grew up, and just start with, where did that idea come from? What gave you the idea to come over here for college?
Well, first I want to say you surprised me with reading part of the letter. So thank you again for allowing me to listen to the letter from, listening to your own words. So that was very special. But so yes, I grew up in Venezuela, and I had just finished high school, and there was the opportunity to apply for an academic scholarship to come to the U.S. And not many students were doing that during that time, but I really was excited about it, and I decided to apply for it. And it was kind of like my idea and some of my friends' ideas, but my parents also got really excited about it. Just having the opportunity to go to another country, and it could have been anywhere. I mean, it could have been in Europe, but I picked the U.S., just the idea of learning English and just having the opportunity to experience another culture and go to college, in a different country. So the idea was kind of mine. It didn't happen right away, so I was a little bit disappointed. So I got into college right away in Venezuela, so I was going to college full-time and working part-time for like a year and a half.
Okay.
After high school, before I got the call that my scholarship had been approved to go to the U.S. So at that point, I didn't want to come. I was like, no. I had a life. I was going to school and doing well, and I was working part-time, and I was dating somebody. So the idea of leaving just didn't sound appealing to me. But my dad actually was the one who kind of talked me into it. Yeah, he said, hey, if anything, go and learn another language, and, it will help you to come back and with your career. And so I decided to come. So
did any of those credits or classes transfer from the year and a half that you did?
No, unfortunately. And my major was computer science. So all the classes that I was taking, they were like physics and mathematics and, a lot of hard classes. And none of that. No, I came fresh. I came to the U.S. and none of my credits, transfer.
Interesting, because you would even think with some of those classes like physics and math that those should have been able to transfer, because I can't imagine that they shouldn't be different, right? They should actually be consistent.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, okay, so your dad actually pushed you. Can you kind of explain, like, what do you feel like he saw as the opportunity? Like, what was living in Venezuela, what was it about coming to the States that was like, hey, this is an opportunity that you should take?
I mean, I think the major thing was learning English, like being bilingual, and especially in my field, because I wanted to study computers and, all the new technology at that time and everything was so new. So even some of my books in college were in English. So I had to study them in, the class in English, even though the testing then was in Spanish. But a lot of the books that I used for research and just to add to the class were in English. So English was, a language that it was an advantage to learn, the language. So I think that's one of the things that my dad thought about it.
Got it. And so you were already a year and a half into college and dating someone, and so you had didn't feel quite as exciting as maybe it did coming right out of high school.
Yeah.
And so was it just that push from your dad that you were like, okay, I gotta do this? Like, do you feel like you really had to kind of pump yourself up about it?
I kind of did, but so I pretty much had like a semester to get ready to come, and we had a lot of orientation, and there was a group of 5 of us that were going to the same city, to the same college. So meeting them and getting to know them and getting, ready to go to another country with a group, it got, I got more excited as we got to know each other. So there were 5 of us. There were 2 girls and 3 men and 3 guys. And to this day, we're still friends. So that kind of got us excited. And we had so many plans. That's something else that I can tell you about.
Yeah. And so I can imagine that a little bit, because when you go to college, that's kind of part of it too, is like you're meeting all these new people and you're creating these new friend groups. And so if you were able to do that with those 5 people before even ever coming over here, I mean, that probably helps ease the nerves. I mean, I'm sure they were still there, but creates more excitement and stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Awesome.
Definitely.
Okay, but other than friends, you also have a ton of siblings. Obviously, you're the oldest. I don't know if you want to go through how many siblings that you have, but was there any, do you remember there being any reaction there from them, or?
Well, I'm the oldest of 8. So no, because I was the oldest and I was already away from home. I mean, I already have left my mom's house, and it wasn't, I don't know. I don't remember like that was an issue, really. I think they actually probably were excited, that I was doing, that. So, but I was pretty much living on my own already and doing my own thing. So.
Got it. Okay. Was that pretty common in the town that you grew up in for people to go away for college, or was that just always your track because you were a bright student?
Yes, it wasn't.
Okay.
I mean, you literally in Venezuela, and I don't know now, I have been gone for a while, but the tradition is like you left home when you got married. I mean, you didn't go away from college like we do it here in the U.S. You stay close to home and all that. I happened to want to study a career that took me away from home, but it wasn't the common thing to do.
Okay. So yeah, you just always had that drive for something more or different. I don't know exactly how you want to put it, but
yeah, I knew I was going to have a career. I knew I was going to graduate from college. There was not even a question in my mind and that I was going to do that. And being the oldest, I think even more I wanted to do well. Like, at that point, my goals were to, be able to work, have a good job, and help my family. So I don't know, I never questioned. There was never a doubt in my mind that I was going to, do well and study and, be able to have a good job.
Do you feel like part of that, I mean, you kind of mentioned it, but do you feel like part of that came from a feeling of responsibility because you had so many younger siblings and also do you feel like either one of your parents, maybe both, maybe one of them, like instilled that confidence in you? Like, hey, you're maybe different than some of the other people here. Like, you're bright. Like, you have this future in front of you.
Yes. So my parents were already divorced, and my mom, my parents divorced when I was 11. So, and we lived with my mom. So my mom was a single mom that worked full time, and being the oldest, I always had to help. I had to be kind of in charge. And so I was very independent. I mean, even before I left home. And I always felt responsible. And until not too long ago, I kind of felt responsible for a lot of my siblings. And fortunately, I'm kind of working on that. And it's been really a great experience to kind of just release that responsibility, which is not mine anymore. But I did had a sense of responsibility to do well and to accomplish my goals. Yeah.
I'm sure. I can't imagine what it's like to have 8 siblings, let alone be the oldest of 8. So, okay, so you get to the States, you get here for college. I don't feel like I've ever asked you this before. Once you were here, so just to backtrack a second, when I went off to college, okay, I came home. I came home for fall break for like 3 days. Granted, I went to school up in Oregon and we lived down in California, so it was a lot closer than Kansas to Venezuela, but I came home for Thanksgiving. I came home for Christmas, many times. But once you were here, when was the next time you saw your family?
Well, so just to know, totally different experience. So I didn't see my family until a year later.
Okay.
Yeah, I could not go back to Venezuela until the next summer. So the summer after I had a year here in the U.S. because of money and because of just the time didn't allow. So when my first Christmas in the U.S., yeah, I was here without family or anybody that I knew for a long time. But my roommate Leslie, who is now my sister-in-law,
Oh,
invited me to her house. Actually, I was there for Thanksgiving, and which it was a great time for me. And Thanksgiving is something I didn't grow up with either. So it was my first experience of Thanksgiving at her house, her parents' house. And then they invited me for Christmas too.
okay.
But I had to work. So I literally spent Christmas with them, and then they dropped me back to where the university was in Ottawa, Kansas, because I had to work. So I spent a few days by myself in this little studio apartment. It was hard. It was just right after Christmas, and it was just me walking to school with snow up to my knees because it was winter. It's
Yeah.
winter. Yeah, it was hard. That first Christmas was hard, but it was part of the experience, and I think I learned about and a lot. I learned a lot from it, and I grew up a lot living like that. But yeah.
So you went home for like the full summer between semesters after your first year there?
No, actually, I took a cup. So what happened when I got to that university, I had to just take English classes for a whole year, like full-time English.
Okay.
It was English just to learn the language.
Okay.
So then before I went home, I wanted to make sure I took a couple of classes, summer classes, to make sure that I got myself into the routine. So I took a couple of classes, the first section of the summer, and then I went home.
Okay.
So pretty much, it was just like a month. Yeah.
So you're home for a month, and then was there any feeling of like, oh, do I go back? Or was it like at that point you were excited about it, or what was your feeling then?
Yes, at that point I was excited about it and to come back, but there were months before I went home where I would just call my mom and say, I just want to go home. It was hard. I thought I knew some English. I could read it, but when people will speak to me, I could not understand. There is something about being able to read a language and then listening to the phonic, which is totally different. So it was very hard to do that. And I called mom many times telling her, I just want to go home. I just want to go home. But she remind me, what my goals were and what I wanted to do. And of course she said, whatever you want to do it. But just, just take time and figure out really, what you want to do and give it time. But all of us, the 5 of us that arrived at that university, we were thrown into dorms with roommates that did not speak Spanish.
Wow.
So but you have to do it. That's the way you learn. You could not just speaking Spanish all the time.
Yeah, and well, I guess that does make sense because especially if your first year, all your classes are English speaking classes, well, you're getting the classes part of it. But then, like you said, you have to kind of be ingrained in order to start understanding it when you're hearing it. And what better way than for your roommate to be someone who's only going to speak English to you? I think it's funny too that just you being thrown into the American culture with going to Thanksgiving at Leslie's house. I'm sure that was just quite the, Midwestern Thanksgiving experience. That was very eye-opening.
And a small town in Kansas, and it was an experience. And I didn't speak that much English then. Still, but it was great. That's the way I believe that I learned. And I want to mention this because my mom used to say, you're just so Americanized. And I always explained to her, you know what? At the beginning, I did it because I needed to survive. And that was the only way to do it. You had to become part of it, part of the traditions, part of the life, of your new life. And, years later, I told mom, I said, I did it because that's the only way that I could reach my goals. And going to places that out of my comfort zone, like to Thanksgiving with people that I didn't know and I barely spoke the language, it was part of it.
That leads me kind of into my next question, which is there's so much excitement around this opportunity, right? And there's obviously a lot of positives. Was there anything else that you can remember back to that you feel like you did or you learned in that experience with how hard it was?
Well, what I really realized too, that it was hard, but the support was there. Okay. We had the support. I mean, one thing, and I think it was planned, the supervisor or the director of the international program at Ottawa University, who I adore, Dr. Morty, and he's still, they're celebrating his 50th year at Ottawa University in during the fall.
Oh, wow.
And, we all invited. He organized things very well. Like even the Venezuelan students, we were not in the same dorms. We were not in the same classes. Mm-hmm. So we had to survive speaking English with people from Japan, people from Thailand, people from France. So everything was very organized in a way that they help us to be successful, mm-hmm. Because we were really trying to learn English, and they were doing it in a way that almost forced us, even if we didn't need to. Mm-hmm. But something that I learned, and I know that was your question, is I learned about myself that I can do it. I mean, I could do it. If I set my mind to it, there was nothing that was going to stop me.
I said this in my letter to start the podcast, but when I didn't fully grasp this until later on in my life, because I think as a kid, I knew that you came here from Venezuela, but I didn't fully understand. But when I thought about what you really did and how you survived that, I know that's a little bit dramatic, but I feel like it gives.
That's right. Yeah, that's about right.
it's such a great example, and you're such a great role model for like, hey, you can do it. You can push through. This is going to be hard, but you chose to do it, and it's going to be worth it. So
yeah, and absolutely, it's been worth it. I mean, there were a lot of times that I, like I said, I wanted to go home, and I didn't want it to keep going, but I'm so glad today that I didn't. And the people that I met through the years, they have been such a great support for me. And I think that I have friends that, I still keep in touch with. And obviously I met who are part of our family now. But it was hard sometimes. I mean, I need to tell you this because this is kind of funny, but even going to a party. So in Venezuela, party means dancing, having fun. And I was not a drinker, but I love to dance.
Yeah, you still do.
And I remember being invited to the first party, and when going to the party, and I'm like, and where's the music? And where's the dancing? Gosh. And there was no dancing, and there was barely any music, and people were just drinking, and I'm like, oh my gosh, even this is not good.
This is so boring. What is so everyone doing?
And in college, we're in college. What are we doing?
Yeah.
But anyways, it was just part of the experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Part of the experience.
That's probably one thing that would have been a lot more fun if you went to college in Venezuela. Would have been the dance parties. I'll say that for sure.
Yeah.
But two questions I'm just curious about.
Okay.
When was the first time a family member, including even one of your parents, who came and visited you in the States?
Well, it was not after 2 years.
Okay.
That I was here in the States.
And who came?
It was actually my mom.
Okay.
And I was getting married. I was getting married to your dad. So
okay.
They came for the wedding. So nobody came. Yeah, they came for the big event. And it was my mom and my dad and his wife. And my grandma actually came, my dad's mom, and my baby uncle with his family.
Okay.
So that's my family that came to the wedding. So,
yeah.
In Ottawa, Kansas. And
I'm sure there was, obviously excitement that they were coming, but also you were getting married. So you probably just had so many emotions at that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just, sometimes I look back and I try to remember, and I don't know, I think I just kind of block some of the memories because you are just for me, it was such a big deal to marry, somebody that wasn't from Venezuela and no getting married in Venezuela. And that was huge. But the opportunity was there, and we could not do it. And there was a lot of things happening afterwards that, we made the decision to get married.
Yeah. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think it's fair to say, like, obviously you wanted to get married and what a great day. But at the same time, there was probably a little bit of like even grief to say, okay, well, I'm not going to be getting married in Venezuela, and all my siblings aren't going to be there and all that.
Yeah. It was huge. And I want to explain to you a little bit what happened, because it was part again of my journey. Because the reason that we got married in July after your dad graduated from college, and I still was a sophomore on my degree because I had that year of English, because your dad got accepted to grad school in Carnegie Mellon. And at that point we had no money, I wasn't going to be able to visit him or he visit me. So we decided to get married earlier. We were going to get married in December, at home in Venezuela. But then I said, well, the only reason I would do it is if my scholarship transfer, if all my credits transfer, which, that's a big thing. And everything worked. Everything, I got accepted at Chatham University in Pittsburgh, and all my credits transfer.
Wow.
All my credits, which is something that is unheard of. So
yeah,
what's meant to be.
Yeah, and you had already had that year and a half that didn't transfer, and you had these goals set out for yourself. So I'm glad that you had those qualifications, but it all worked out, like you said. Okay, so I said I had 2 questions. So the other question is, was there anything that once you got here and you started experiencing the American culture that really surprised you about it, that you weren't really expecting?
Well, you need to remember, so there was no social media.
Yeah.
There was no emails yet. So it was movies. And, there was a stereotype of when you see movies and American movies. And you always, we always saw people the Americans were colder, like the culture was not as warm as the Hispanic culture and all that. And well, I did not experience that at all. I mean, I was surprised to how welcoming the people were at the university and the friends, that they were always there for us, especially for the international students. It's almost like they knew how hard, was. And, they were always there for us to support us and to offer us help. And since this was a small university, like about 500 students then, we have what they call college parents. So we had parents, adoptive parents.
Oh, cool.
That will take us to their house for dinner on Sundays. We're allowed to do laundry at their houses. So there was, it was such a small town that they were able to do that, and a small university. So that was, something that I didn't expect it. And it was totally different than, what I thought it was going to be. So
it sounds like the international program setup that the college had just was pretty awesome. It provided the support in a tough situation that you guys needed. So
it was, and it was it was really a college town, and I think it's still to this day it is. I mean, Ottawa University is the town, and a lot of students get there and become part of the town because of the warm welcoming that they get from everybody.
So I know that you and Dad, you guys built everything that you have now. The family, the wealth, etc. The life that, we got to grow up in as kids. But you guys didn't get to that point maybe until your early 40s or so. Like, I know it wasn't, there was not a struggle, but just like anyone else, you guys had to build up that family and build up that wealth and whatnot. But my question is, did you ever have moments where you thought back to how you grew up and how different that life was from what you were living then or even now?
Yes, but it was different, and maybe in a different way than you were thinking about it.
Okay.
Because the life, you're right, your dad and I started as students and college students and built our careers and started our life together with financially nothing, whatever we were, working for. So yes, we had to start from the bottom, and we had, there were struggles because of money and sometimes, living out of credit cards, but we were very blessed to be able to graduate and get jobs right after, we graduated. And what you're saying about different at that point wasn't, because like I told you, that was always my goal. Okay. There was never a doubt in my mind that I was going to be successful and I was going to have a career and a job. But like you said, fast forward a little bit later, maybe when we moved to California, the second time to El Dorado Hills, to a more permanent situation. Yes, at that point, and you're right, we were in our 40s or early 40s, it was like a wow. It would have been really hard for me to accomplish and have what we had at that point, material things at home, just because of Venezuela as a third world country. So it just would take a lot more Not that it didn't take a lot of work here, it did, but it just would have taken a lot of more work and money and, effort to do it there.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of what I was getting at, because just for anyone listening, what my mom was referring to when we moved to California and back to El Dorado Hills for the first time, but back to California for the second time, that's what I really remember, because I was 5 when we moved, or maybe almost 6, when we moved to El Dorado Hills. And so that house that I grew up in and you guys had for 25 years, is that right? Yeah. Is the house that I remember, and all of those memories are what I remember. Obviously, you guys were years into building this family and that life for a long time, but I always just wondered, like, okay, well, this house, which is, was in a nice neighborhood and a nice community, was so different from what then I remembered when I was 10 and we went to Venezuela and visited, your mom and your sister and whatnot. So, sounds like you did have those wow moments.
Yeah. And it was very different. I mean, when I think about it, the way I grew up, and like I told you, my mom was a single mom and she worked full time, and we never owned a home. When my parents got divorced, one of the things that they lost in the marriage was their home. So we always, with my mom, we rented. So, it's almost like, and it wasn't bad. And that's the thing. My mom always made things look good and feel good. More than look good, just feel good. Like it was always home. But we rented. And I mean, for what that I can remember, maybe we went through 8 different houses from when I was 11 years old until I was 18 and I left home. So it was very different to just have at home. And like you said, we were there for 25 years and it was our home. So that part was a little bit different. But when I think about it, I realized that's all that my mom could do, so, and that's what I feel blessed. I feel blessed that, your dad and I could do that for our family and a little bit more sense of stability, I guess.
Yeah. And I do think it is also amazing, just going back to kind of what you were describing as your childhood too, that I feel like it was never a conversation that you had with us as kids of like, well, I didn't grow up with much, or, almost sometimes, I don't know, like throwing it in our face, like you guys don't know what you have, or anything like that. I can only just imagine the job that your mom did as a mother, because whenever you talk about your experience as a child and the life that your mom gave you, it's all positive. It feels all positive,
Yeah. And that's what is important about the experience, because materially, I mean, if you look at the material part of it, it was a very different experience that you guys had. We gave you guys and I had. But I mean, little things like going to the beach with my mother, and she made it so special, and even boiled eggs with salt, it tasted so good. And just sandwich bread with butter and sugar, it just tasted so good because she made it that way. So she always made this experience so beautiful. And so I guess I didn't think about it a lot, because I felt like even we didn't have a lot of material things, I always felt like we had a lot. But I do believe that your dad and I also provide for you guys what in a lot of cases we didn't have, because we were not able to have when we were growing up. And we offered you things that we didn't have, that we were able to provide for you guys. So I do think there is a sense wanting to do that because you didn't have it. You didn't have it.
Yeah. And I just want to say too, I know Dad was in a similar boat. Like, he didn't grow up in a third world country, but I know that he also didn't grow up with all the things that we grew up with kids either, right? Yeah. But I want you to be honest with me. I'm curious about this. You never did it. Like, I never remember you doing this, which I applaud you for, because I feel like it would be tough. But was there ever moments when we were 3 little kids running around and we had all the things? We had Game Boys, we had little digital cameras, we had, we had so many little things that you were just in the back of your head like, you guys don't even know how good you have it. Like, I didn't have any of this stuff when I was a kid. Like, I wasn't going on any of these vacations either, or like, whatever.
I believe I thought about it. Like, you have no idea. But and I'm being honest, it made me so happy to be able to have those opportunities for you guys. It really did. And I think that's just part of sharing the wealth. And that's one of the things that give me happiness. And not only with you guys, but with others too.
Yeah. That's awesome. Because I do think that there's many ways that situation can be approached. And so just,
absolutely.
Yeah, for you and Dad to both have the approach of just, it brings you joy to share that and I see that because you don't only do it with us, your kids, but you do it with other family as well. It's really cool. But that brings me to the other family piece. So, obviously, like we talked about, for a while you were here in the States and all of your family was still back in Venezuela. And that was the case for a long time. And now that's not the case. Now you live here and you have a lot of family that lives around you. And so I wanted to ask, like, what does that feel like? What does that feel like to now be, in the stage that you are in your life and be kind of surrounded by family?
Yeah. It's wonderful. It's amazing. Like you said, I didn't have the experience of, and you guys didn't either, because when you guys were growing up, we never lived close to family, and especially not my family. And I never thought that I would have part of my family living close to me. And in the last 10 years, I have 3 of my siblings that have moved to this, just 5 minutes away from us. So it's been an incredible opportunity to reconnect, especially with my brother, who we're only 5 years apart. And I left, and he was still, in high school. Well, just starting high school, and I didn't have a relationship with him because he was younger. So it's just been really amazing to reconnect with him and have become friends, and we have a very close relationship. And then I have 2 of my half siblings that also moved here after being in Florida for 16 years. And they even more them because they were babies when I left.
Yeah, like how old were they?
Well, my little sister Rosa, she was just 1, 2 years.
Okay.
So I really, we really didn't know each other. You didn't
know her, yeah.
So of course, when I went home, I visited and we saw each other. But it wasn't until, she moved to California that we created a relationship. Wow. And now with my other brother, Frank, it's a little bit different because I was already helping to take care of him when I left home. But still, they were very young, and it wasn't until now that we have built an adult relationship. And it's really, I wish that you guys, that they would have been here when you guys were younger and were home to have that, experience of being close, growing up close to family. But
me too, because they're awesome. We love Frank and Rosa and Luis.
And we have great parties.
Yes. Yeah. And great food.
And dancing.
And they help with so many things, like the amount of things that they've helped moving, and Frank with all his handy skills. Yeah. But that is interesting to think about, because I think I can't remember, 10 or 12 the last time I ever went to Venezuela. Yeah. But I remember when we would visit with them. Like, I remember we would see Maudie and we would see Frank and all of them. But even at that point, I mean, you wouldn't have really spent that much time with them in person. I know you guys have always been really great at communicating in other ways, but you wouldn't have spent that much time with them as an adult at that point. No.
But even though, like you said, we were growing in different countries we kept a close relationship and communication. And my mom was part of it for many years, because she made sure, the boys call me on my birthday and stuff like that. Because I was the only one gone for many, many, many years. And so she was part of, keeping that communication flowing and making sure that, we were in touch. And of course, like you said, every time we went to Venezuela, we visited and we knew them. And yeah, I mean, it's very interesting, but the love have been there all along. And, it just took a little bit of time, getting together in the same seating and reconnecting again. So, and like I told you before, I'm the oldest. So a lot of times the calls are there just because they think I can fix everything, but I can't.
Yeah, I can't even tell you the amount of times, like, I can think back to when we were in the old house and you're on like an actual phone, not a cell phone, like a phone, a house line, whatever that's called. And you're I can tell in the tone, you're like trying to mediate some sort of conflict between the family. It feels like you've always been that.
Yeah. But I am graduating from, actually, I already graduated from it. I'm not letting them call me the older sister anymore.
Really?
I'm just another sibling because we're all adults and everybody can take care of their own problems.
How has that transition gone so far?
With my siblings, it's going well, actually. Now, my dad that is visiting right now, he's having a little bit of a hard time with that. Because he always wants to put me in charge. And I'm like, nope. Yeah, I'm not in charge anymore.
That's funny. Well, good job setting your boundaries. We talk about that a lot on this podcast.
Definitely boundaries. Too. Yes.
And I have to say, so I'm, as you guys can see, if you're watching the video, the background is a little bit different than normal because I'm actually at my mom's and dad's house right now. And yesterday, Cora and I got here and we were here working and my mom was out running a few errands. And my mom and I can actually track each other on our phones through the Find My Friends app. And I gave her a hard time when she came home, kind of just being silly because she told me where she was going. But then I all of a sudden saw she was at her brother's house. And that wasn't the place that she had told, or that wasn't one of the places she had told me she was stopping at. So she gets home and I was like, I saw you were at Frank's house, kind of giving her a hard time. But in reality, I have to say, it actually brings me so much joy that you can, like, just on your way home from running errands, like, stop at your brother's house.
Yeah.
Like, that is really cool,
it is,
and something you didn't have for a really long time. And so even though, there might be I have to set my boundary to, not be the big sister anymore, but to be able to have that support is really cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. Yeah. It's very nice to be able to just to stop by and just knock at the door. Here I am.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, we're going to wrap up, but I know, but like I always do with all of my guests, I do have a rapid fire round planned. So basically how the rapid fire round goes is I'm going to ask a question and the goal for you is to answer in 1 word to 1 sentence max. Okay. And as fast as you can. It's supposed to be like first thing that comes to mind. Okay. All right. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Question number 1. What is one thing that you're grateful for right now?
Joy.
What is one thing that you are working on right now?
Myself.
I love it. What is something that is making you inspired right now?
Oh, gosh. Just looking at the future.
What is one place in the world where you would still want to travel? And just so you guys know, my mom has traveled to a lot of places and she's been on a lot of cool trips lately. So I'm curious about this question.
Alaska.
Ooh, that's on my list as well, actually. Okay, awesome. And then number 5, really, really curious about this one. Favorite child? No, just kidding.
Don't do that to me.
Don't answer that one. Okay, I have to actually think of the 5th one because I didn't think of it. Okay, real question number 5.
Okay.
Would you ever be on this podcast again?
Of course.
Yay.
I will. It's been a pleasure. And I love sharing things with you that probably I told you, and there are some that I haven't told you. Yeah. So it's been a great experience.
Well, thank you for being on. And I selfishly really love doing episodes like this with people like you and with Cora, because I even feel like it's one day going to be really fun to even be able to listen back to this, right? 10 years from now, be able to listen back to this. It's just like these memories that we've created that we can look back on, which I think is really awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Cool. Well, like I said, thank you again for being on. I really appreciate it. I love you.
I love you more.
And so I will leave you guys with this, like I always do. Changing your path will not be easy. It will be challenging. And I'll say that over and over again, but it will be worth it. So do a self-check today. Are you on your path up your mountain? And if not, what path are you on?